journalist who's been covering both Epstein and Maxwell extensively, also author of the Red Letter on Substack. Welcome to you both. Mr. Goodman, let me just start with you as someone who represented multiple victims of Epstein, including a woman named Caroline Kaufman, who was 17 in December 2010 when she says she was raped by Jeffrey Epstein in his mansion in New York after having pictures taken of her by Ghislaine Maxwell. From your perch as a representative of those victims, what you make of the number 2 of DOJ going to talk to Ms. Maxwell, coming back tomorrow, and the possibility that some deal is being floated?
Look, this has become nothing other than a dumpster, or I should say Trumpster fire for the administration. They are attempting to influence a key witness in this circumstance. Ghislaine Maxwell, I watched the clips you played. It is appalling to ever call her anything other than a sexual predator and a rapist. This is a woman who, multiple victims that I represented, she took control of the situation. She organized all of these young girls going out to various different individuals at various different times for sex acts, both here in Palm Beach and in Manhattan, as well as the Virgin Islands and all over the world with Epstein. This woman is not a victim. She is a perpetrator. She is where she belongs right now, behind bars, and should stay there. Now, having said that, if there is information she has about people who were part of this scheme, then by all means, all of that information should be disclosed to the general public so that everyone can hear about those individuals and what they've done.
Tara, I've sort of started to question my sanity, as is sort of often the case these days, about watching this kind of worm turn on this, where you have the long promised sort of like global conspiracy that reaches into every corner of everything. And then there's one person that we absolutely know for a fact, absolutely, was an accomplice to these crimes, and that's Ghislaine Maxwell. And you write about political figures close to Trump, Charlie Kirk at Newsmax. Charlie Kirk, Newsmax host Greg Kelly, appear to be softening the public towards the possibility for survivors. Those kinds of comments aren't just offensive, they feel like a betrayal. What do you make of what we're hearing the whispers and hints of already from those corners?
Yeah, I think that what they're trying to do is normalize Ghislaine Maxwell. So if a decision is made, or if her testimony in some way clears the president, that it will be seen as valid before the MAGA base, and it will be a signal that it's time to move on. Ghislaine Maxwell said, "I'm clear, it's fine, we move forward." Wink, wink, nod, nod. Maybe she gets clemency. She's told, you'll have a pardon at the end of this, a commutation. But this is softening the ground and trying to create doubt, actually, in the stories of so many of the survivors. And that's why it's been so traumatizing for them, because so many of these women who were young girls, as Spencer knows, I mean, it took a lot of courage for them to come out and to testify against Ghislaine Maxwell. And the many times they testified against Jeffrey Epstein back in 2005, and they were ignored, and then to come back again in 2021, and to finally see a shred of justice, to see one person behind bars, Ghislaine Maxwell, and then to hear that all of that work, all of that heartache, having to relive through the trauma, it was for nothing. That they're lost. They're like, they've always been in the dark this entire time with that sweetheart deal, and now there's a possibility that there might be another sweetheart deal that happens again behind closed doors, and they have no say. And it's just become an entire betrayal from the Justice Department against them. And it's not some broad conspiracy. It is just a two-tier justice system in which some people get off and others don't.
You're nodding your head, Mr. Goodman. Does that scan with how the folks that you represent or you yourself are feeling?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I saw the clips that you had of my good friend, Mr. Edwards. Him and I were at the inception of this here in Palm Beach. I represented victim number 1. This was a 14-year-old girl that I helped walk through both the criminal case as well as the subsequent civil case, and then subsequently 8 more victims of the Epstein saga. And this has been incredibly traumatizing to them throughout their entire lives. And Maxwell was at the tip of the spear. Look, I've given the analogy before, but it bears repeating. If an old white-haired man walks up to a 14, 15-year-old girl and asks her to come back to his mansion, their guard is going to be up. They're going to say no, more likely than not. But when a refined, English-accented, well-dressed woman approaches a young girl and promises that she can be a model and she can, meet somebody to get her into the industry and she's beautiful, their guard goes down. If there wasn't a Maxwell, there wouldn't have been an Epstein.
That is really, really well said.
Precisely.
Final point for you, Tara. On the Wall Street Journal reporting, when this